would die.
Peter Owen walks to work every morning. Although it's good exercise and relieves stress, he sometimes wets his pants.
I moved to Tahiti, built my pottery studio, house on the water, and pearl farm.
Peter grew up in a California suburb in a typical split-level home. 40 years later, in French Polynesia, he lives on his own three-building lagoon. A two-bedroom, one outdoor bath home. His very own pearl farm. And solar-powered pottery studio, the first and only of its kind in Tahiti.
French Polynesia, often known as Tahiti, is 121 islands that are spread out in a huge area larger than all of Europe. We are 4,100 miles from Silicon Valley, where I was born. This is Huahine Island, and Huahine itself is made up of two different islands, two volcanoes that are hooked together. For about $1,000 a month, I can pay my utilities, my food, and some wine imported from France.
Claimed by France in 1842 and annexed by them 40 years later, French is the official language, and all Tahitians are considered French citizens. Vive la France! Tahiti is a slice of old Europe transported to the tropics, but Polynesian culture still flourishes.
Locally, we have an expression, haremaru, which means to go slowly. It really represents the Polynesian life here, which is take time to smell the roses.
Peter lives with his family in Huahine now because as a young man, he followed his dream.
When I was 11 years old, my parents took me to Tahiti, which at the time was just a bunch of grass shacks, wonderful music, partying, dancing. It seemed like such a wild, fun life here in Polynesia. I was determined to someday go back to Tahiti, and so I worked in my little pottery studio day and night, trying to make enough pots to make enough money to get back to Tahiti.
Peter earned enough for a one-way ticket and made the move. And he was determined to carve out a living in Huahine, using the pottery skills he learned in the United States. Except
because in Tahiti there is no clay. The Polynesians use wood traditionally because there is no clay that can be used to make ceramics here in pottery in French Polynesia. And I was actually the first potter bringing clay in from California.
My father taught me everything. I was about my son's age when I started working on the wheel.
Still fragile. This glaze will melt and become like a colored glass surface. And then it will be fired to 1,350 degrees.
a potter does not live by clay alone. And for Peter to open the first pottery studio in French Polynesia, he needed to think out of the box.
This is my kiln that I built about 10 years ago. You don't find ceramic equipment here in Polynesia, so I imported the bricks and put this kiln together brick by brick. The burner here I got from the old bread oven here in town. This burner uses a mix of diesel, kerosene, and reused recycled French fried oil. Once the burner gets heated up, I will turn it around and it'll go into the kiln here through the side. The flame will go across the kiln and back out the other kiln. It will fire this kiln up to 2,350 degrees, and that's very hot. If I open that kiln door, I would die. We live in the middle lagoon. We should take advantage of this and learn about pearl farming. The bigger the pearl, the more valuable the pearl. It could be worth up to $10,000.
Peter Owen left his life in California to become the world's first Tahitian potter.
I was actually the first potter here in French Polynesia, bringing clay in from California.
With his pottery studio a success, his paradise life was almost picture perfect. There was just one more problem he had to get away from.
In the middle of the night, you wake up getting eaten alive. There's too many mosquitoes, no-see-ums on the island. We couldn't even sleep at night. We started by building a small platform here in the middle of the lagoon just to sleep on. And it was so good that we built our house. The house on the water is built right on the edge of an interior reef. And you can dive off that deck into the deep blue. It's just amazing. The house was built with these poles that go down into the sand down below. They're made out of a local wood mara. And so we have about 60 poles on this. Water right here, strong pressure. The water's coming actually from the mainland. I pulled a water line across the lagoon, about a mile of pipe. It took me 3 weeks with little weights on it to keep it weighted down in the lagoon. And this house we built here over the water cost a total of about $20,000.
Getting away from the bug-breeding jungle had an additional benefit: inspiration for his next Tahitian venture. Oysters.
We thought, gee, we live in the middle lagoon. We should take advantage of this and learn about pearl farming. Did our first pearl farming right there at our house over the water. And my wife said, why don't you get this out of the house? I don't really appreciate having a pearl farm in the middle of my house. So we decided to move the pearl farm across the way over here. And we have about a mile of lines out here in the middle of the lagoon. And there's about 100,000 to 200,000 oysters at a time out here.
The nutrient-rich mud that runs off the island's 2 dormant volcanoes makes poor clay, but produces the perfect conditions to cultivate this very profitable creature from his black lagoon.
These have been in the water about 18 months. That's how long it takes to make a pearl each time. Out of the 100,000 oysters, probably 5% of them will be A-quality pearls.
Founding the only pearl farm on Huahine Island, Peter broke into the $10 million a year Tahitian pearl industry.
And here we go. The bigger the pearl, the more valuable the pearl, and it could be worth up to $10,000. It's a living thing that comes out of here. This is a living gem. That's what I find so unique and magical about this.
Peter found true love in Tahiti, earned a living with his passion for pottery, and struck gold mining the mud of his own lagoon.
Everything did start with a lump of clay and a lot of hard work and a lot of dreams, a lot of imagination. And if you don't take the chance in life, you know, you don't do anything.